All right.
Hello, good morning from Washington State, Seattle. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you follow us from. It's with me, Ibrahim Asonko. I'm the host of the Dialectic Space podcast. And today, my guest is Mr. Lamin Dibba, who works with Budget and Microeconomics Transparency, which is a civil society organization in the Gambia. It's also a colleague that I've known from Nusrat High School. We all went to the same school. And there's a story to that. Hopefully, I can tell you guys later. But I'm really happy to have my really wonderful colleague here with me today to talk to me about something that is extremely important to our lives, which is the economy, the Gambian economy. So, Lamin, welcome to the Dialectic Space podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Ibrahim. I'm doing well. Thank you very much. I feel welcome already, and it's a pleasure to be here. Honestly.
Thank you so much. So we're just gonna get right into it. Wherever you follow us from, like I always say, please go ahead and if you're following us from YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, wherever you are, um, please go ahead to our YouTube and subscribe to support. The goal and vision of the Dialectic Space podcast. Like I always do, I like to bring people here that inspire me with their work, that inspire and challenge me with their ideas of how we could really transform the country that we all deeply care about. So today we're really going to dive into the concept of the economy, the government economy, and also the 2026 draft budget allocations for our country that I believe is being tabled or is due to be tabled before the National Assembly. So we'll start from the foundations, Lamin. Like I always do, I like to ask my guests who they are, what shaped them, where they're from, with in view to sort of understand who really is behind the ideas that a lot of people relate with, or sort of the man that they always see or the woman that they always see without really understanding who is this person or where they actually come from. So I'll begin this conversation from the top. So tell us, who is Lamin? Where are you originally from, for example, and what key values sort of shaped you in your early years? And what's your educational journey also like, for example, from high school to university, and who were sort of also the most influential people in your life growing up? If we could begin from there, please.
Thank you for the great questions. My name, as you've already mentioned, is Lamin, and surname Dibba. I am originally from Badibu, Salikenye. I was born in Kambo, and then I was taken back to Badibu, Salikenye. That's where I grew up. That's where I did my nursery, primary, and junior secondary school. And then I moved on to do my senior secondary school at Nusrat High School, after which I started at the University of the Gambia. I actually started in the accountancy department. And after a semester, I had a scholarship to go study abroad in Turkey, where I switched from accountancy to economics. So basically, I mean, my educational journey has been one of a beautiful one. I mean, from my perspective, because it has always been something that education per se has been something that I fell in love with since I think grade two. Nursery was not that good actually. When I was going to nursery school, it was a fight. I used to dodge, and my teacher used to come all the way to my home to pick me up from home to take me to school. So it was a tough one during the nursery days. But then I think I started falling in love with education at grade two. Yeah, and also the most influential people uh, in my life, I'll say my mom and my dad. Everything begins with them. They are the two most influential people in my life, and then obviously my teachers as well. I cannot name all of them, but I can remember two who have influenced my educational journey. Specifically, Haruna Fatajo and
Hmm.
Al Hussein Jata. These two have influenced my educational journey because they were the heads of, I think, press club for Haruna and also peer health for Mr. Jata. They kind of shaped me and shaped my learning skills to say, and I'm grateful to them for that, honestly. So basically, this is more or less the story behind me. If I have left
Yeah.
out anything else, you can ask.
So, and still, I mean, sort of trying to understand who really Lamin is. What do you remember as some of the fondest childhood memories of your life growing up? Is it playing soccer, or is it, like sort of extra math classes or studies, or just what are some of the fondest memories that you had growing up that sort of still lives with you as an adult?
Definitely football. Football used it still is actually. I was football used to be a great thing for me.
Hmm.
Now I'm quite busy. I'm not able to play every single day, but in those days when I was going to school, junior school, I used to play football almost every single day whenever I had the chance. So it right kind of, you know, was my hobby. It still is my hobby. In fact, it is my hobby in practice, not
Hmm.
in visual, because I don't watch football a lot, but you come to me and tell me, let's go play football, there has to be, if I do not come with you, there must be a quite genuine reason, probably work or
Yeah.
studies. These two would be the only reasons as to why I would not go join you to play football. So football was the joy in my
Hmm.
life, aside from educational activities, football was. And also, speaking of educational activities, peer health, for example.
Yeah.
I remember this moment when we traveled from Salikenye Then I was, I think, in grade 7 or 8. We traveled from Salikenya to Combo to do a spits. Peer Health. It was a play actually about malaria control stuff. So we went to Paradise Suite Hotel, and then we performed over there in front of the crowd. Thanks to Mr. Jada for that. That is still one of the most memorable days that I can remember from my early days. Yeah. So football and peer health activities, specifically this kid that we did in Paradise Suites.
So you've always been like really committed to school, and I've mentioned this in the beginning. Lamin and I, a story that I think I have to share. When I first started Nusrat High School, I started in the commerce class. I believe Lamin and I were in the same class initially. I think the first few weeks until I decided that the balance sheets and the budget matters, or the economy is not really my forte. That I was struggling in the class. I belong elsewhere. And then I made a challenge to the then principal of Nusrat High School, Mr. Bojan, to move me to the art classes because of just my ability to connect a lot more with the sort of humanities, like the arts, the histories, the governments. I just felt I naturally belong in that area. But you've always been, to make the point, that you've always been really like committed and really very brilliant in school. At what level do you realize that, or at what level of your life did economics stood out for you, that this is what you want to do? Because also, like in high school, then you don't know what you want to do, you're just trying to figure out a lot of things, right? But at what level did economics really stood out for you, that that's what you want to study?
Actually, it wasn't at high school. You've already mentioned this. This is a common thing for almost all Gambian high school going students. Usually, if they are in a field, they make sure that they perform extremely well in all the subjects, so that when they get to university, making a choice will not be a problem. It's like you make sure you are good at every single subject, and then choosing from them will not be a problem at all. So it was the same for me, because as I've already mentioned, when I went to the University of the Gambia, I did the accountancy program. I started the accountancy program, not economics. But one thing one thing that I was good at was I was good at economics. I was good at financial accounting that we did. I was good at mathematics. So all the core business related or commerce related subjects, I was good at them. So I could have done any of them. I could have done accountancy, I could have done economics, I could have done business management, or any other field for that matter. And at the university, I started accountancy, and when I got the scholarship, uh, so during the scholarship application, I chose a set of fields: business management, accountancy, economics, and all of them. And then, fortunately for me, I got into an economics program. And that
Okay.
is how I even switched from accountancy to economics when I traveled to Turkey.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's basically it. It wasn't then okay. Now when I got to start my economics program, that was when I really fell in love with economics, especially during the early days. Things like courses like Introduction to Economics,
Hmm.
the way the lecturer or professor will explain economics terms and phenomena, and then connect the theories to the practice. That was amazing for me. That was really amazing for me, because you could see theory in practice. I could relate to economics because it was theoretical, but also it was every theory that is in economics can be applied.
Hmm.
Right. So that kind of was amazing to me. That was why I even began falling in love with economics, and it has been that way since then.
So when you got a scholarship, went to Turkey, did your undergrad. I believe you perhaps also did your graduate studies there as well, and eventually you decide to come back to Gambia. And currently, you work for the Center for Budget and Transparency. In case for those of you who do not know, why did you decide to come back when you had other opportunities, for example, to go elsewhere and work, or even continue to live abroad? or study or to work, because economics is not just a Gambian subject. It's global. You could literally work anywhere. You could work at international financial institutions like IMF, like World Bank, like some of our Gambian economics did. But you decide to come back home and you work in civil society. You basically work in public now. What really influenced that and why?
My goal has always been to contribute to my country's national development. Be it soon or later. That has always been my ultimate goal. But when I completed my master's program, I even got an offer to proceed with my PhD program, a scholarship, a merit-based scholarship offer. I turned it down because I felt I had to ground myself in practical economics, applied economics, before I could go on further to begin a PhD program. Because to start a doctorate program, I always believe there is a prerequisite for a doctorate program. That is, embedding yourself into practical applicable before you get into doctoral research or any. Otherwise you conduct a kind of research that you are not grounded in, and I did not want that. I did not feel ready to begin a PhD program without having a practical economics experience. So speaking of practical economics experience, I wanted to obtain that in Turkey, but it was not possible because for Turkey to work in the government sector, especially the Ministry of Finance, or their Ministry of Finance, let's say their Ministry of Finance, was practically almost impossible for a foreigner. You could either work in a banking sector, which was still difficult, or work in as an English teacher, work in an informal sector. And I was hell bent on making sure that I got the right economics knowledge, practical applied economics knowledge. And I could not get it in Turkey. So I would have loved to learn about Turkey's economy from the practical standpoint, because I did learn about it from the theoretical standpoint. Would have loved to stay on and learn about the practical aspect of Turkey's economy, but that opportunity wasn't available to me. That was why I had to come back to the Gambia. Because if I came back to the Gambia, at least I would be able to learn about the country's economy. And the goal, by the way, was to learn the Gambia's economy. But again, if you learn about it, understand your own economy much better. That was my ultimate goal of wanting to stay in Turkey to learn about the economy, and then later on, come back to the Gambia and then learn about the Gambia's economy. But it was fast track. I think that it was a blessing in disguise, I could call it. So when I got here, the first thing I did was to make sure I found out a way to get connected to the team, that is the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. And thanks to one person, I think I'll name him later as one of my most influential people probably. But that person facilitated my going to the Ministry of Finance to intern there. There, the director of Ministry of Finance, budget director of budget told me, "Look, there is no pay here. You're gonna learn, but there is no pay here." I was
I think we're struggling with Lamin's internet for a little bit. Lamin, can you hear me?
Oh God, hello.
Dibba, yeah, I can hear you. Yes, yes. Please
Can
continue.
you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Yes, please continue. People
All
are
right,
gonna keep
perfect,
calling you
perfect.
if you don't do not disturb your phone. Calls are gonna keep coming on.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
So that was basically it. When I got into the Ministry of Finance, I wasn't worried about money or something, even though I stayed there for like nearly 5 months as an intern,
Hmm.
waking up every single day to go there. I was thrilled, I was happy, I always looked forward to every single day to learning new things. And then I did learn for 5 months. What I was able to learn, if I tell you, Ibrahim, you may not believe it, but what I was able to learn, if I were to monetize it, leave me to be in millions. For me to be in millions, because I was able to learn so much within a short period of time. I was able to learn so much about the Gambia's economy, and it made me become proud of the decision of coming back home.
Yes.
Honestly, it did make me become proud, and then I proceeded on to improve on my knowledge of practical Gambian economics.
But you didn't end up staying in.
So basically, it was to contribute.
Yes. So I was just also going to say that. So you did not end up staying in government. You only interned. At what point did you decide to get into civil society, for example, with your current work now? And also talk to us about what your current work really involved. What is it all about?
Yeah. So when I towards the end of my internship, when I left, I actually at the time of doing my internship at the Ministry of Finance, I was also lecturing at the University of the Gambia. So I was lecturing in research methods, and I also lectured in economics. And during the time, I think at that time I wanted to focus on because the work at the university kind of became a little bit intensive. And I wanted to give my all to my students. For me, whatever I'm doing, I try and make sure I give my all to it. So that was part of the reasons why I had to leave, and other reasons, but nothing negative, all positive reasons. And then when I left, immediately after I had left, actually, I started working at Gambia Participates as an economist. And my journey at Gambia Participates was nothing short of amazing. Actually,
With Mar.
I had a wonderful experience over there. Yeah, with Mar. Actually, I had a wonderful experience over there. And then while I was there, Mar is a very inspiring individual.
He is. He's
When
great.
you're around,
Yeah.
inspired, exactly. So, and also, it's not only Mar. All the colleagues over there, they he's great at setting up the right kind of environment, and that is wonderful, really, really wonderful, because all the people that I met there were remarkable, and they inspired me. I was able to work with them, amicably. And then that inspiration, because while I was there, you see, wherever I am, Ibrahim, what I do is i, I kind of study the environment, and I kind of study from the standpoint of, okay, what can I do better?
Mm-hmm.
How can I improve on what I do, and also how can I increase my impact?
Mm-hmm.
So, and when you think like that, Ibrahim, it's sometimes it can be a curse,
You create value.
because it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but also it has this thing of forcing you out. Like, you don't act, you feel like a coward. So, and for me, as far as my educational journey goes, I've never been the one to be shy of, taking risks.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was at Gambia Participates, I saw a huge gap within the civic space, not at Gambia Participates, I mean within the civic space.
Mm-hmm.
Gambia Participates actually helped me understand this gap, within the civic space. That practical economic application is deficient in our civic space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have people, human rights, justice and things, of that sort are well represented, and well advocated for in our civic space. But when it comes to inclusive economic development, things related to our economy, things related to our specifically our economy and the macro economy, it's very limited. And I knew that, I had to branch to contribute to the civic space in a much better way, actually. And obviously, the repercussions for that, were that, if you are going to start something, obviously you have to sacrifice the need for a salary.
Yeah.
Salary. So, and having a kind of job at Gambia Participates, being paid a decent amount of money, and not having to worry about your monthly spending, and now having to make this decision of setting this up, because if you do not, you will actually be failing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So when I moved, I talked with Yahya about this, Sonko.
I know him.
Yeah, I
Yes.
talked with him
How
about.
is he doing, by the way?
Yeah, he's doing remarkably well,
Yeah.
and he's one of a genius too.
Say hello.
He's
Say
doing
hello for me,
remarkably
man.
well. Yeah. I'm super proud of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I talked to him. Then the moment we talked, yeah, and we have this thing normally. When we talk about things, they click. It's where do we start from there? What do we do? Let's just do it. So, but then obviously it wasn't like that to rush into things. We had to plan and we had to do registrations and everything. We did all the necessary things, and then we set it up. So we started in February 2024, last year actually. We started, we registered, and then we started right on. And since then, we've been committed to conducting research, on the public finance, on the economy, and all that. So this is basically the basic idea behind it, was to make sure that once CBMT is established, obviously, with time, we'll be able to bring in more economists, because that couldn't have been done in my previous organization. So once CBMT is set up, we'll be able to bring in more economists. At least a decent amount of economists for an organization. At least one organization that specializes in the economy and the macroeconomy alone. We
Hmm.
wanted to create that kind of niche within our civic space, because it is quite important. It's quite important. We know the conditions of our economy and our economic phenomena, so we had to do something about that, and we have done it. And it's been a journey. It's been a very exciting journey, an adventurous one for that matter. Yes. So this is the idea behind it. This is basically the idea.
Great stuff you guys are doing, man. It's always so wonderful because I know you, I know Sonko, I know a lot of really incredibly smart young Gambians who are doing really very inspiring stuff in their line of work. And just to say also, like, it takes a lot to leave a lot of what you could otherwise be doing abroad and just go to Gambia and be committed to um, just developing various aspects of our lives that are otherwise not like a primary focus for a majority of people. You're right. Like human rights, for example, and women's rights advocate. I always used to joke that everybody in the Gambia is some form of volunteer or human rights advocate, or just everybody is so, and which is okay because Gambia needs that. But there's also a fun, a huge market in terms of what other people could focus on too, especially if you have certain level of expertise or skill to add value to the ongoing issues about economy, about budget. Because at the end of the day, like everything else we do, it borders on money, it borders on our economy. And if nobody is focusing on that, that's why we create an environment where there is lack of knowledge or understanding about this critical component of our way of life. But I'm really curious also to ask you, there's a lot of economists in the Gambia, some great, some not so great, especially some of our I mean, economics, for example, that you see hold a lot of conversations. I mean, some of them are not, they're list of my favorite. I have my favorites, but I was just curious in terms of who are those in terms of economics in the Gambia that really inspire you, or you look at them that sort of influence you in your line of work.
I mean, there is a lot of them, but you've asked the favorite. I think the one that I can say is Alphasin Toure. He's worked at the central bank. He's currently on his studies,
Hmm.
but he is one inspirational person. Al-Husseini is, relentless in his pursuit of knowledge. He inspires me every single day. He is one of actually my favorite. I mean, I have other favorites too, but
Yeah.
he is my number one favorite economist, as far as Gambians go. Yeah. And there is also another one. Funny thing is, he is into economics, and he understands economics greatly, but his background is not necessarily entirely economics.
Oh wow.
Mamadou Lamin Dabo, yeah. I mean, he when he does economic analysis, you will be amazed.
Wow.
He understands the core things, core issues of the Gambian economy, and he gives practical solutions. Practical. It's good talking with people like him. Talking with people like Al Husseini. These two I can, and obviously Yaya too. I mean, he is also part of my favorite economists. But
Yes.
sometimes. he is my brother. He is my friend. So you cannot be too biased, you know.
I
But
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
So let's.
Musa,
Hey, Musa. Yeah, I think I remember Musa too, man. Someone, right?
yeah,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes, 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 yes. So let's grow this a little bit further. Talk to us about the concept of economy or economy as a concept, right? For a layman like myself, who is not an economist, has very rudimentary knowledge about what economy really is, which we could arguably say is same for a lot of Gambians too. In simple terms, what does the concept of economy really mean? When we say economy, what are we really talking about?
You know, Ibrahim, I think you are being modest. I think your knowledge of economics is well improved. You know, it's really, really good. Yeah, but coming back to your question, economics is it is born out of a need. You know, the need and that need, or more like a problem, and that problem is scarcity. You know,
Mhm,
we've talked about this a lot. You know, even from a very junior level of studying economics, they tell you scarcity in the sense of like limited resources. You know, finite resources. Be it money, be it houses, be it cars, be it whatever you need. You know, to improve your life, to increase your social welfare. Basically, just is limited. So the resources that you need to make your life better are quite limited almost all the time.
mhm,
But then again, you have needs, you have wants, right? So here is the conflict between resources and the needs or wants that you have. Your wants, your needs are infinite, but your resources are quite finite. So there is a mismatch there. But then you have to satisfy your wants, right? You have to satisfy your wants. And then now you trying to satisfy your wants in the most optimal way possible is why economics exists. Because economics is the reason why societies, people are able to look at their finite resources, allocate or make decisions as to how to allocate those finite resources to things that will help them achieve their goals in terms of wants, in terms of needs, in terms of satisfaction. So, in a simple sense, economics is basically the study of how to allocate your resources efficiently and effectively in an optimal manner to satisfy your needs, to satisfy your wants. Yes,
and
this is
and
basically the
how
simplicity behind economics.
how does this system of uh, a society having limited resources and to use those limited resources to satisfy our needs and our wants, how does this work at a macro level, and explain to us what at macro level also means, and also grassroots level economics, that dichotomy, if you would really dial it on that a little bit, please.
For that, I'll have to probably bring in the idea of you know economics at a micro level and economics at a macro level. So when we talk about macroeconomics, I'll specifically focus on, because I know you've mentioned earlier on that we'll talk about the budget. When we talk about macroeconomics, let's look at public finance for an example. A government having limited resources and deciding how to allocate those resources, to produce public goods and services is one way to look
Mhm,
at it. And without the knowledge of economics, there is a high chance that without proper knowledge of economics, there is a high chance that you may allocate those public finances or public resources in an unmeaningful way or in a suboptimal way. But with good knowledge of economics, with good practical applicable knowledge of economics, the limited resources that the government has can be allocated in a very efficient manner, in an effective manner, that it will enhance growth, it will lead to economic development, and also it will lead to increased standard of living. Again, that all comes back to satisfying human wants, increasing human welfare, right? Or improving human welfare. So economics at a macro level, from the public finance perspective, boils down to the budget, the money that the government plans to raise and the money that the government plans to spend. That money is the resource that you have. It's not unlimited, it is limited, it is finite. How you are going to spend it, how you are going to allocate it is quite important because you have to make a choice. You know, the fact that scarcity exists, limited resources exist, will force you to make choices between the things that you want the most and the things that you want the least.
Hmm.
That's why the idea of, you know, scaling your preference or scaling your wants in an order of priority is quite important in economics. You see, this is the idea behind it. In fact, this is the idea behind economics. There is scarcity. You have to make a choice. But in making a choice, you have to prioritize your wants, your needs in an economic, meaningful manner.
Hmm.
Can you say in an
Yes, yes.
economic in an economic meaningful manner? So scarcity, from scarcity to choice, and from choice to prioritizing your wants or needs in an order. I mean, that's actually making a choice, and then addressing the most urgent need of yourself, the most urgent need of the economy. Now we are talking about the government public finance, the most urgent need of the government, addressing that. If the government fails to address its most urgent needs or allocate proper resources to address the problems with respect to its most urgent needs, if the government fails at if the government fails at that basic thing, it means it has failed at the basic application of economics.
Wow.
So that's why economics is quite important, you know, at a macro level and at a micro level. I've already mentioned. If you look at an individual person, let's say, for example, you make, let's say you make $30,000 a month. You work somewhere, you make $30,000 a month. You have a limited resource, $30,000. But I'm sure the things that you want to buy are a lot, and they
Hmm.
cost more than $30,000, right? So an economically rational person will be able to spend that $30,000 and gain the most satisfaction, or not most, probably the most optimal satisfaction out of using that $30,000 than a person who does not understand economics. See, this is why economics, the understanding of economics sometimes can be forced upon you even without you realizing.
Yeah.
I think everybody applies it without even knowing it, actually. Probably could even be to an extent that, you know, someone who hasn't studied economics, understands economics to a significant degree that you cannot even imagine. So it's a daily application. That is why some philosophers, most of them will say it is the behavior, it is the study of a human behavior as it relates to that human's daily economic activities. You see, in a single day, you can make several economic decisions without even realizing it, actually. So again, coming back to that 30,000, how you allocate it means you have to prioritize the needs
Hmm.
that you have to address. For example, you are sick, let's say, and then you need to take care of your health. How much will go into that $10,000 is you need to allocate to that, because if you do not, you will die. Not allocating to that and allocating that 10,000 to, let's say, going on a beach trip or picnic, would be a mad thing to do.
Yeah.
That is an irrational behavior. That's why, it's important to know economics from a rational perspective, because economics says one thing: you have to be rational in decision making. Economics helps you with rational decision making to
Hmm.
maximize or to optimize your needs, your wants, and the satisfactions you derive from using your money or your resources. Basically, this is it.
Lamin, let's we're trying to dive deep and narrow this conversation down to our context, right? Now, Gambia um, is largely, by various economic indicators, an impoverished country, which essentially means that majority of the people live under poverty or below the poverty line, for example. And what is your historical, both your historical and current assessment of Gambian economy? How has it been? What, how comparatively to other economies also around the continent, those that we stand, I mean, shoulder to shoulder with, how has our economy been doing? You know, what is objectively your assessment of what our economy has been and what is right now as well?
I mean, the Gambian economy has been performing. The comparison with other countries could be quite significant. I think, for example, Senegal. If you look at Senegal overall, the Gambian economy has been performing uh, like less than the Senegalese economy's performance, and we've
Comparatively.
been, yeah, comparatively, and maybe Guinea-Bissau, we've done better, than them, but they also coming up, and obviously, other African countries, I believe maybe Ghana, Nigeria, for those they are way ahead,
Yeah.
But here is the thing, from looking inward, the Gambian economy, I think from probably the first republic has has set up the infrastructure, the economic infrastructure, of course, the public infrastructure and all that, not to a significant degree. But when I say public infrastructure, I mean public service infrastructure.
Mhm.
And the First Republic tried to structure the economy in a way that it would be productive in terms of agricultural production, especially agricultural production.
Mhm.
But over the years, when we look at the agricultural sector, especially, and of course, that is a component of our GDP, the gross domestic product, the agricultural sector has not been performing uh, upward. It has been performing at a downward trend, and that means that our agricultural production has been low. If you compare the rice production, groundnut production, especially groundnut production during Barra's time, it's more than the groundnut production during Jammeh's time,
Mhm.
and also the groundnut production during Jammeh's time more than the groundnut production currently.
Mhm.
Production is depreciating, and rice production too, has been in the same way. But now here is the thing. Overall, when you look at the Gambia's economy from independence up till now, the biggest problem has been that everything it was never started from a long-term perspective, or could not be started at a with the vision of a development. It was either probably started by the First Republic and it was going fine, but it was only the First Republic. And
Mhm.
when the Second Republic came in, all the infrastructures that almost either got destroyed or neglected. And because of that, infrastructures related to agriculture, infrastructures related to our fishing sector, infrastructure related to our environment, forestry, deteriorated. And that led to decreased production in our primary sector. In our primary sector, it led to decreased production. And also in our manufacturing sector. I remember the elderly people saying that we used to produce oil or something,
Mhm.
probably not to a significant degree, but at least we used to produce something, within the Gambia. But now, I mean, manufacturing. But
Mhm.
now, when you look at the Gambia, it's only agricultural production, primary sector production. You could not proceed to secondary sector production where you manufacture. So everything that you produce at a primary level, raw materials, you export. And
Yeah.
because of that, our manufacturing, industry has almost died. So from the time that we gained in independence up to this time, I don't see it as comparing, let's say President Barrow's administration to former President Jammeh's administration to former President, the late President Jawahar's administration. No, I see them from the standpoint of a combination of all. They are complements to one another.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, our governance system has never understood that. It has always been pegging one administration to the other and and because of that, attempting to destroy the previous administration's work. Government doesn't work like that. Government has always been a building block. One does this, it's good. During Jawara's time, we had agricultural production, food security was increased to a significant degree. In fact, during Jawara's time, we had growth, significant growth. If you were talking about the time, if you were to compare the numbers, which probably may not be very fair, but if you were to compare the numbers, the most level of economic growth rate that we experienced was based on research that I've conducted was during Jawara's time. We had, I think in the 1970s, we had something like, 23.3% economic growth,
Wow.
which is now at this point in time, it would be a dream to have something like this because right now we have some things, we are between 5 to 6% in terms of economic growth. This is real economic growth, you know and that is sad, to shift from 23. It used to be, this is not like a one time thing, based on what I've researched on. It's like, they say 1970s it was around 23.3% growth, and 1980s it was 8% growth, and then it then fell down to 5% growth, and it has been that way. At least in this current administration, we've seen the economic growth has been around 5%. And if you were to translate that in numbers, it's not a lot. But then during that time, to come back to that, during that time, Java improved the agriculture sector. Food used to be. I wasn't born then. But food, according to when I sit with the elders, what they would say, food used to be, available.
Right.
People did not worry about food at the time. There was a significant level of food security. Probably, this is from the experience of the people. If you look at the data, it could give you, because data doesn't exist much. I wanted to check it out, and all that. I've tried to do it, but I wasn't able to secure a lot of data on that part. But food security, based on surveys that I have conducted, with the people in the grassroots, food security used to be, food was secure, to say. But during Jammeh's time, you realize that when agriculture was supposed to be added onto in terms of improvement, implement, to modernize the agriculture, to commercialize it even more, to make sure that we tap into our agricultural resources. When that was supposed to be done, it wasn't done at an aggregate level. It was done at a personalized level. We all know that, former President Jammeh was really into agriculture, but unfortunately, it was personalized. He personalized agriculture. Instead of focusing on the government's improvement of the agriculture sector, he kind of unfortunately focused on his self-improvement of the agriculture sector, and kind of like that probably must have taken from the agriculture the improvement that it should have gotten, the improvement that it should have carried on from Jaura to Jammeh. And then now we had that problem. The agriculture sector deteriorated because of that. In fact, probably because agriculture contributes to the GDP. Agriculture's contribution to GDP, I'm speaking from now, is around 20%, less than services sector. The resources, natural resources that we have, we could make agriculture the major contributor. It's not only agriculture, fisheries, forestry, mining. We could make these the major contributor to our GDP, or to a significant level, as much as services sector. That would improve our GDP a lot. But that is not happening because of the deterioration of the sector. Fisheries sector. When I say agriculture, I mean fisheries as well. Deteriorated because we had cold storages. Even in my village, Salikenye, we have the remnants of cold storage facilities, during from Jawara's time, I believe. But those cold storage facilities are no more existent. They could have been improved. They could have been built on. They would have improved our economic growth, or even maintained it from 1970 example. It could have been improved, but no, that wasn't done. And then now in the current leadership, we have massive. It's like now the current leadership, I think, with respect to agriculture, is a problem of, I think, understanding economics, or utilization of resources in a most efficient manner, because resources are being pumped into the agriculture sector, but for some reason, the rice production, groundnut production, seems to be lower than the previous regime's production. Groundnut, especially, used to be low, is lower than the previous regimes, groundnut production. So basically, there is a lot to explain here. What I want to say here is this: our economy is deteriorating. In fact, there are things that we can reference from here and there, but when we look at the macroeconomic standpoint, the macroeconomic view of our economy, because that's something that I really like us to focus on most of the time. When you implement a project, when you do an initiative, what is the macroeconomic impact of that project? What is the macroeconomic impact of that initiative? That we seem to forget most of the time, especially our government. Even if you look at the agriculture sector right now, fisheries sector, you talk with a government official, they will tell you there are improvements in the fisheries agriculture sector. Money is being pumped into it. We have development projects that are underway and that are being implemented right now, but those development projects are not translating into our macroeconomic improvement. Our macroeconomic growth, our macroeconomic development, they are not translating into that. And as long as that exists, it means that all that you have done at a micro level is of no use to the macro.
Yeah.
And we will suffer for that. We will suffer for that. So our economy has been deteriorating from a macroeconomic standpoint. Our economy has been deteriorating. Our currency, our dollar has been devaluing. It has been deteriorating. It has been depreciating. From Jawara's time to now.
Yeah.
Our agriculture sector is depreciating from Jawara's time to now. Our fisheries sector is not doing well from Jawara's time to now. You see, our international trade, in fact, is also not doing well. You could say from Jawara's time, data doesn't exist much with that, but from Jammeh's time to now, it has been pretty much more or less the same, or in fact, it has gotten worse. Because if you look at our trade deficit, our balance of payment deficit, specifically the export imports or trade in goods and services, it is widened. The deficit has widened. It is like it was like a more like a waiting period, from, I think, the data that I've looked at, is from I think probably 2005, 2011 or 2005, all the way to 2016. The deficit has been widened, but to an acceptable level. But from 2017 to now, it has widened to a significant degree. It was like, let's wait until 2016 ends, and in 2017 we just spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And that also brings in the comparison between the previous regime and now. But in a nutshell, the Gambian economy is not doing well. And if I am to put in my subjective, based on the research I've done, if I am to put in, because this is debatable, if I am to put in my subjective view of our economy, I will say that Jaura did better than Jamme, and Jamme could have done better than Jaura, but because he focused too much on himself and his wealth, he could not do better than Jaura.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, Baro is not doing better than Jamia in terms of our economy, in terms of helping our macroeconomic, in terms of inflation, you know, in terms of, obviously the GDP will grow because the price, because of inflation, obviously our nominal GDP will grow, but our real GDP is less than is actually less than half of our nominal GDP.
Yeah.
That means that real economic growth is very much stunted or stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, because there is a thing of like 4 billion increment from one year to the other. That 5.3% increment that you see is normally around that end. So is it 4 billion? Probably $4 billion increment, or maybe something less than that or something more than that. But it's not significant. That's what I want to say. The figure may not be exactly that, but it's not significant. That is clear. So economy is not improving significantly, basically. And this is like a trend from Jawara to Jamme, from Jamme to Baro now. So every economic indicator, almost inflation, you know,
Lamin, are you with us? The Gambian internet always does this thing with this. It's just brilliant analysis of, Lamin, are you with us? Can you hear me?
yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
Hello?
clear. Loud and clear.
All
Yes, I
right.
can hear you. Yes.
So basically, the Gambian economy has been, to my view, and based on the research I've done, has been on a decline. It has been on a decline. We can see figures increasing. Probably that could be due to exchange rate differences and all that. But the Gambian economy on a whole has been. I think citizens can feel from a micro level, and macro level we have already explained. We see the signs. Yeah, and we're definitely doing
So
less than.
yeah. So and there's another observation too. I think all these numbers of how our economy is improving. If it is not improving, if it is not like really showing in the quality of the life of the individual at home in Sabah Sanjali somewhere, is and that's where really people are struggling. Is like overall you can look at Gambians and be like, yo, there is something happening in this country. There is serious struggles, and people are poor, people cannot afford basic commodities to feed themselves, to survive. Healthcare is deteriorating. It's just a lot of things are bad, and so politicians can just sit up everywhere and just make the claim that, oh, we're doing well as a country, or certain numbers can even suggest that we are. But I think overall, if you go around and you see the way of life of the people, it's not representative of what is happening at an individual level. But I was just curious now, knowing fully well and through your work and research that you've done in terms of government, the status of our government economy, what should be sort of the priority areas that this government should look into in terms of making sure that we have an all-inclusive economic system that is, answerable to the plight of Gambians?
Prime, that brings us back to probably the basic of an economic structure, you know, because we clearly we clearly have endowments. If you look at the economic structure, our extractive sector, or you could say our primary sector,
Hmm.
could do better. Our secondary sector, the manufacturing, construction sector, manufacturing especially, could do better. Our services sector is kind of like the holder of everything together. It's the major contributor to our GDP. But now coming back to this, what I would suggest, if I were to suggest to, our policymakers, if I were to suggest something to our policymakers, what I would suggest is that they work on improving our primary sector and our secondary sector. The services sector will automatically develop itself if you develop the primary sector and the secondary sector. Now let me dig deep into that. When I say primary sector, what I mean is basically agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and mining sector. We have already seen that our soil is good. We could improve our agriculture sector. We could basically, people keep saying anything you grow in this country, anything you plant in this country, the soil will make it grow, right?
Yeah.
So we can improve our agriculture sector, crop production, rice production, millet production, sorghum production, everything that we majorly consume in this country, we can produce to a significant degree. You've already spoken about the fact that someone in Sabak Sanjal is not able to feel the impact of an economic growth.
Yeah.
They are not able, it's not able to translate to them. But what if you developed our agriculture sector? Someone who is doing agriculture in the Sabak Sanjal area could feel that.
Hmm.
Development in the sense of mechanizing our agriculture sector, having massive developmental allocations in terms of funding to our agriculture sector, funding that will be controlled, funding that will be monitored, funding that will really go into developing our agriculture sector. That will mean food security for us. Our food importation, rice importation will go down. You know, and here is the thing. They may say, okay, it's not that easy. You may produce domestically, and the price may be higher than what if you import it, right? That is true. That is a valid point. But it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. Comparative advantage sometimes is not naturally given to you. It is created. And our
Hmm.
government has failed massively at creating comparative advantage for our country. We have the natural resources to support us. develop the agriculture sector, mechanize the agriculture sector. This will in turn help farmers. Private sector, farmers, agriculture employs, let's say, agriculture employs more than 50% of our population, right? So if you improve the agriculture, that means that 50%, that more than 50% of our agriculture sector will receive the benefit, either in the form of mechanization of their farming, or improvement in their revenue generation, and also improvement in the yield. The goods and services that are provided to the market will improve, supply to the market will increase, and that will also be able to take care of the aggressive demand that we have in the country. Automatically, supply meets demand, prices will go down. Improving agriculture alone can even help fight inflation within our country. And not only agriculture, but also, again, inclusive agricultural development. Ibrahim, you've mentioned inclusive, it's quite important. The kind of development where someone in North Bank region receives is going to be the same kind, or the kind of help that a farmer in North Bank region receives, either in terms of farm implements, mechanized farm implements, or inputs, or even credit, is the kind that a person in Upper River region will receive, a person in Lower River region will receive. We're not talking about one-sided, just a small amount of, a small number of, people in the community being helped. No, we're talking about a macro level investment into our agriculture sector, where all areas in our economy are covered. All farmers are covered to a significant degree. That is when we will see a macroeconomic impact. And that is what we mean by inclusive development. Now, this also applies to the fisheries sector. We have the waters. Our country is blessed with fresh water. In fact, that comes back to agriculture, rice production. Jahali Pachar is there. We've talked about this Jahali Pachar for years. Our government has tried to develop this Jahali Pachar, but to no avail. That tells you again a lot about economic resource allocation. That's why economics is quite important. But then coming back to the fisheries sector, we have the waters, we have the fish, right? Now, you can, to make sure that you invest in the future, you can temporarily loan or lease out your water, your land, to a foreign investor, so that you can amass a lot of money from them and use that money to invest by yourself into that particular sector. You are not telling them to go, but you're telling them, look, I'm ready. I've gotten the funding that I need from you. I need to now take charge of my own land and develop it, or take charge of my own waters and develop and tap into my resources, for my own people. We have these agreements where the European Union and other, North African countries have this agreement with the Gambia government, where they can fish in our high seas, because we are not able to do that ourselves. But for how long can we just stay and say that, we are not able to do it, we are not able to do it, we are not able to do it? Look, you have to be strategic with your life. Even with your personal life, you have to be strategic. You have to say, okay, this time around, I don't have the money. Let me try to find a way to have the money. That includes leasing. Okay, that includes having these fishing license agreements with these, with North African countries or European countries. But then you are going to get money from them. That money should go back into developing your fisheries sector. In fact, from the domestic standpoint, buy vessels that they buy, that they have, fish yourself, and then supply to your own domestic market. But can you imagine the fish catch? People have complained about this. Some of us have not seen the results, or maybe the evidence of it, but they've complained that the fish catch that is done by the partners that we have from other countries, the landing is done in Senegal, or not in the Gambia at least, and that deprives our market, our domestic market, of the fish that we are supposed to get. We all know, obviously, that translates into the high cost of fish that we have here. Imagine a country with waters of ours, is having this high pricing, or having this fish, costly fish market, where when you go to, you cannot even get decent, nutritious fish at a cheaper price. That is not doing justice. That means we are not doing justice to ourselves. We have the waters, we can improve our fisheries sector. Government can buy vessels to help artisanal farmers, artisanal fishermen rather, provide them with vessels, and government itself can venture into fishing. through probably private sector means PPP, private sector partnership, or even through public corporation through public corporations. They can set up an SOE for this particularly. But then again, we are not able to do that. Imagine if we did that, again, our fisheries sector will improve. That will lead to inclusive development because we'll supply to our domestic market and the fish price will go down. Obviously, the thing about pricing normally to help it in a real term is to ensure that supply meets demand. Aggregate demand is not severely more than aggregate supply. That is basically in a normal term is that what people want, what people demand is not severely more than what could be supplied to them. That leads to a price, they put pressure on prices to increase for inflation to take effect, and that is happening either structurally or in real time, that is happening in our economy. We've seen it with our fish. Again, we have the waters for logistics, ports, eco tourism, things of that sort. In fact, I've had this conversation with someone recently, we've talked passionately about these issues, that we can improve our primary sector, we can improve agriculture, fisheries, and also, fisheries and waters. We can improve the logistics. We can improve the ecotourism part of our fisheries sector, or let's say of our waters. Build lodges, eco-lodges, along our waters, River Gambia, to attract tourists, and that will bring in foreign exchange for us. And that foreign exchange could be used to be plowed back into other aspects of our economy, or even into our tourism sector to develop it even more, to attract more foreign exchange. And then now forestry, right, and mining. We have black sand here in our economy, right? We are not utilizing it properly. We could use that black sand to gain revenue and put it in our national covers and develop our other sectors. In fact, even develop our mining sector in the best way. Look, the money that you generate is not supposed to be all spent on frivolous things. The money that you generate as a government, as a country, you have to be strategic with that money. Investment is key for a country like the Gambia. There is no way that you can progress without investing. There is no way. You have to invest. You are obliged to invest. You are obliged to deprive yourself at the initial stage. Take that money, put it into your productive sector. If we do not improve, develop our primary sector, the fishing sector, the agriculture sector, the forest mining sector, we will pay the price for it. In fact, we are paying the price for it. Forestry sector, timber, for example, is a lucrative natural resource that we have in the country. It was privatized in a way, kind of like, private individuals were contracted, to take care of this timber export for the Gambia. The thing that I have with the government is that sometimes it's too difficult to do. They outsource it to private individuals. Going to be damned, destroyed. I think government needs to put off whether they are going to put off their gloves or put on their gloves and then take the matter into their own hands. Government is not good at business is an excuse. Government cannot be invested in these things is an excuse. We are a small country. We are not like America, the United States of America. We are Gambia, a small country. And we have a lot of people in our public sector. All you need to do is to make sure that you build the right human resource. I believe we have the right human resource, right? Employ the right kind of human resources to different sectors of our economy. Take charge of our economy in a meaningful way. What the government is supposed to take care of, let them take care of that as much as the private sector does, right? Timber, coming back to timber, for example, within a short period of time, I remember was this around 2023 or something? There was a period when for a small period of time, timber exports generated millions of dollars for the Gambia government. Imagine if that money were used properly, right? If it were like generated the right way, not through private means for it to go into private pockets and only a small amount will go into the government coffers, but government taking charge, to handle this timber business, right? Imagine if government did that by itself, right? What could that have done for our economy? Significant revenue generation for our economy, of course, right? All of these, primary sector development, all of it means one or two things. For the beginning, develop the primary sector. And make sure that if you cannot transfer it to your secondary sector, manufacturing, export it initially. When you export it, you are going to gain foreign exchange. Hold on to that foreign exchange, use it and plow it into your manufacturing sector. Buy capital goods that can produce the resources, the raw materials that you extract from the primary sector. With time, obviously, it cannot all be done at once, but make sure that is part of your long-term plan. Buy those capital goods, build factories, build processing plants, and make sure whatever resources, raw materials you get from your primary sector in the long term, you put it in your secondary sector, manufacturing sector, manufacture those raw materials into finished goods. Once you have the finished goods, now you are ready for business, right? Export them to add value to them, not just export your raw materials because they haven't been, increased in terms of value. Add value to your raw materials into making them into finished goods and then export them to get more from your own products. And in fact, it's not only exportation, it's also to supply the domestic economy. This will help us become domestically dependent on our own domestically produced goods and services instead of being dependent on external goods and services, because that means imports. That means import dependent economy. An import dependent economy has a tendency of either being affected by external shocks or importing inflation into the country. You see? So an economy has to be with the mindset of attaining independence with time. It cannot be achieved within a short period of time. But your economic independence, your economic sovereignty is gonna help you a lot. In fact, it's gonna help you improve your economy. It's gonna ensure economic development in your country. It's gonna reduce prices for you, and it's gonna create employment, Ibrahim, employment. It will all come down to employment. If you improve your primary sector, you improve your secondary sector, you improve agriculture, fisheries, forestry, mining sector, and that would improving it means employment for Gambians. And also manufacturing sector, you improve by buying capital goods, and then building factories, industries. That also means, again, extra job for Gambians, right? But now, what that will create is you will depend on your own domestic resources, domestic goods and services, and your services sector. The tourism sector and other service providers will depend on your own domestic goods. Now, services sector, once you are doing all of these things, when you are improving these first two sectors, you have to make sure that there is comparative advantage. That is cheaper production. Because if you do not ensure cheaper production, it's gonna happen right on. But with time, that has to be part of your plan to make sure that there is cheaper production, so that the domestic prices are lower or at the same level compared to the external prices. That is one way that you can draw the services sector to the domestic economy. They will not, instead of importing goods and services from other countries, they will instead buy domestically. And then the services sector will now, the prices will increase, prices will decrease, automatically. The services sector, transportation cost, importation cost and things like that will decrease. And that's not the only benefit, but access to goods and services will also increase for our services sector. So going straight to developing our services sector, forgetting our first two sectors, the manufacturing, our extractive productive industries, will only lead us to depending on external countries. That is why we are import dependent. That is why, in fact, you see that the services sector, how is the service sector able to contribute immensely to our GDP? How is it the most, let's say the highest contributor to our GDP? The services sector is driven by the need for goods and services. Without goods, in fact, you cannot provide service, right? Tourism needs construction. For example, hotels, they need to be constructed. You need beds and all that. If you are not producing them domestically, you are going to import them. So your whole services sector that is boosting your economy, your domestic economy, your GDP is actually dependent on external forces to do that. That's not even safe. So production is key. Production in the productive sector, the manufacturing sector, and then that translating into helping our services sector is really key. So while we are doing that, yes, please.
No, I was just going to ask. I don't want you to sort of preempt our next line of discussion, which hopefully we can try to wrap up with that, which is the 2026 draft budget for the government of the Gambia. We've seen it. A large chunk of it is going towards debt resettlement, for example, or in simple terms, the money that we owe to various, I mean, international financial institutions. Those funds are going to be used for that. But you also did slightly talk about, for example, domestic borrowing as well. So talk to us about the 2026 draft budget allocation. What are the allocations like? What are some of the priorities of this government? And how significant is it from, if, for example, like our 2025 budget, what are some of the areas of concentration that this government should be looking at? And ideally, what should have been the priority in terms of this budget that the government is missing?
So the theme of the government, I believe the theme is improving the lives of ordinary Gambians, something like that. Probably not exactly that, but something close to that. That is to improve the
Something like,
welfare of ordinary Gambians.
yeah.
And looking into the budget, if you were to be fair to them, the government, obviously you'll say, okay, it's well represented. If you check the development budget, there are things that you see for 2026 that will interest you and they will intrigue you because there are huge amounts of money. Let me put it into perspective for you. For example, our development, is captured in our development budget, in our country's development budget, the national budget. But the priority of the government, as far as the priority of the government goes, is not just towards development only, it's also towards government itself. And in fact, it is more towards the government than towards our development projects, our development initiatives. Why am I saying that? Because we have domestic resources, right? We have, and the domestic resources obviously add other things added, you end up having government local fund, right? By government local fund, I mean our tax revenues are included in that, our non-tax revenues are included in that. Anything that will generate from tax, anything will generated by non-tax means will all be considered as part of our government local fund. Now, that government local fund, the major chunk of that government local fund is going into recurrent expenditure of the government. That is taking care of office spending, salaries, allowances, travel, vehicles, purchase of fuel, maintenance of vehicles, and all that. Now, if you look at it, you realize that a huge chunk of our government local fund, a huge chunk of it is going into that. And then the other part, significant amount is going into repayment of debt. Only a small amount is going into our development as far as our government local fund is concerned.
Mhm.
It tells you that the government's priority, if you want to know the government's priority, like real priority, look at the government local funds only. You'll be able to tell a lot about the government's priority. And as far as that goes, it is the recurrent expenditure, the office expenditures that have been prioritized. Right. But now there is a component of the development budget that is not coming from our local funds that we call project grants.
Mhm.
Project grants, thanks to project grants, as the government has proposed, obviously, thanks to project grants, we are able to have hope for our development initiatives, because about 70%, over 70% of our development budget is donor funded, or is expected to be donor funded for 2026. That is a massive number, right? But with donor funding taken into consideration, and obviously external borrowing, that is also part of our development initiatives. The government will borrow to help our development initiatives go forward. When you
Mhm.
take the external loans and the project grants together with the government local fund that will go into development, you have a total of 20.17 billion that is going into development alone. So that 20.17 billion is for over 90 government projects, development initiatives, over 90 of them. You see, this is not just peculiar to 2026. 2024, 2025, the government has had over 90 development projects that it has intended to implement. And out of those 90, at least nine of them for 2024, nine of them were what development projects I'm talking about, ranging from agriculture to health to education, to our water and energy infrastructure, to our environment, and all of that, to our road infrastructure. For 2024 alone, the amount of money approved, for these major projects, nine major projects, the amount of money that was approved for each of them was at least $500 million. 2025, the same thing. It was around 16 major projects, again, ranging from agriculture to health to other sectors, 16 major projects that were worth at least $5 billion Gambian dollars. Right? And for 2026, again, what the government has proposed to the proposal the government has sent to the National Assembly is consistent of or composed of 15 major projects that are worth at least 500 million. Why am I saying all of this, Ibrahim? The reason I'm saying this is because development is significant. I mean, it may not be the government priority because the government is not putting our local funds into it, but it is significantly covered in terms of what is approved and in terms of what is proposed. Now, when it comes to the actuals, in terms of what comes in to develop our economy, to develop our development, or to develop our development initiative, or to improve our development infrastructure, our infrastructure in the country, when it comes to the actual money that goes into it, that is where the problem lies, Ibrahim. There is either improper planning, right? Improper foresight, poor budgeting, or inaccurate reporting emanating from corrupt practices. It is either one of these things. And based on the research we have conducted, we've realized that it is corrupt practice because the government is not being monitored. The executive particularly is not being monitored when it comes to the development money that comes into to improve our infrastructure. And how that money is spent is not properly monitored by our parliamentarians. It's not properly, or it is not audited by our National Audit Office. I think private firms audit it. Our National Audit Office may be involved, but it is not the main institution that does the auditing. So basically, even the audit reports that we see are excluding our development projects. So a huge amount of money is coming in, going into our development initiatives. The government's budget looks beautifully put. You almost do not have anything to say when you look at it, except for obviously allocating all our domestic resources to recurrent spending. Except for that, when you consider the project grants, you almost do not have anything to say when it comes to our development budget. Because if 9 major development projects for 2024 were implemented properly, the 16 major development projects for our 2025 were implemented properly, the 15 major projects for our 2026 are implemented properly, I'm telling you, Ibrahim, we would see the macroeconomic impact. We would see it. But the fact that we are not seeing it means that it is either that our money, the monies that come, were not put into our development infrastructure the way they were supposed to. They were misused, they were mismanaged, they were misappropriated. Either that, or our executive, our institutions, government institutions were incompetent in implementing those projects. That is why we are not seeing the development that we need to see. Because you cannot put in billions of dollars, millions of dollars into development and still we are stagnating. We are stagnant, we are not improving.
So
it is the amount of money that goes into development, that is approved for development, let me put it that way, the amount of money that is approved for our development. If all of that goes into our development, Ibrahim, we will not be talking about inflation the way we are today. We will not be talking about... Yes,
Lamin, can you
please.
hear me? Yes, can you hear me? Lamin, can you hear me? Mr. Dibba, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm came well, loud and clear. Come well.
Yes.
Lamin, can you? Yes,
Yes,
so
I can now.
Good. So I was just curious, you've delineated this. So
I can hear you clearly. I think it's kind of like take it.
slow.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
So I was just going to say you've
So
delineated this
Ibrahim,
so
I think I'll
greatly.
continue speaking.
Go ahead, go ahead. Diba, Diba, can you hear me? Seems we're struggling with our internet from the Gambia, and we apologize for that. But Lamin, can you hear me?
No, no, please continue talking. I was gonna say, okay, I was gonna say, but anyway, you can continue talking. I think you were gonna ask something, probably.
No, no, you can actually finish. But while you are at it, I also want you to dial it a little bit on. So whose
Yes,
responsibility?
yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes, yes, loud and clear. Whose responsibility would it be, for example, to ensure that these developmental projects are in fact
Yes, I can hear you.
executed?
I can hear you clearly, Ibrahim.
Yes, that these development projects that are on the budget are executed. They're not only executed, but also there is sort of compliance in terms of accountability, because I think that's a huge problem. Like you said, the National Audit Office don't audit
The,
developmental projects that are coming. You can hear me,
okay, perfect.
Diba? Can you hear me? Yeah, Diba. Maybe you can leave and come back on if that's okay, please, Mr. Diba.
Yes, yes, I can hear you. It is the responsibility. All right.
Maybe you can leave quickly and come back right on. Yes. Sorry about that, everybody. That's with us. So we'll try to get him back. Let me see. Let me message him real quick. Lamine, come on.
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
Good.
me?
Yes, yes. I think your
All right.
internet was stripping for a little bit, but I was just going to ask. You were delineating the status of the 2026 draft budget very greatly, and the issue of developmental projects, for example, and the fact that they are not being audited by the National Audit Office, and so they sort of have been precluded from public some form of public accountability, especially from the National Assembly. It may look like, whose responsibility is it going to be to ensure that like sort of the developmental projects are being followed to the latter, but also like they sort of are compliant in terms of what they are even set out to do? What should the public do, or what should the National Assembly do? Yeah, it seems reception is slow reaching Lamin at this point.
So the
Can we?
National Assembly should improve on its oversight.
Yeah.
The problem with the National Assembly is once they approve the budget, there seems to be this. There's, can,
Yes,
so,
I hear
so I
you.
was saying the National Assembly has this tendency to think that once the budget is approved, that's it for most of them. That's it. There is no need to scrutinize the spending of the government. There is no need to ensure that they monitor the executives' spending expenditures. They have this tendency to do that. They think it's not necessary, but it is quite necessary for them to keep monitoring the spending of the government, the spending of the executive, because it is still their responsibility to ensure that the budget is executed the way it is supposed to be executed.
Mhm.
The monthly, quarterly reporting of the projects, in fact, by law, the projects are supposed to report to the Ministry of Finance the Minister of Finance, the Accountant General's Department, on a quarterly basis, their financial activities, the accounts of the projects, they are supposed to report that to the Ministry of Finance. And obviously, the Ministry of Finance is supposed to keep track of that, monitor and see if the spendings or the expenditures are being done in the way that they are supposed to be done. The National Assembly also is supposed to do the same thing. That is scrutiny of all public accounts, especially project accounts on a quarterly basis or even on a monthly basis. But that scrutiny is deficient. That is why there is this gap of tight, strict oversight when it comes to our projects. Because National Assembly members would want to wait until it's too late, or will not do it at all to this when it comes to, I mean, this particular scrutiny that they are supposed to do. And also, so that brings us to this. The National Assembly has a responsibility to ensure that there is continuous oversight. Even after budget approval, they ensure there is continuous oversight. That is their responsibility, especially the Finance and Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly. They have to make sure that this is done at a strict level and also without interval. Either it's going to be monthly or quarterly, but they have to make sure during execution is when they get the data, the public accounts, the project accounts, so that they can scrutinize them. In addition to that, the executive also has a responsibility, especially the Accountant General's Department and as a whole, the Ministry of Finance. They have to make sure that all project implementing units, the projects that they are implementing, are well monitored, and then the accounts are reported to them, but they are not enforcing that law onto all project implementing units. And the information system, the financial information system that is used by government entities is not being fully used. It is not being fully utilized, especially by project implementing ministries. Almost all these major projects that are being implemented by government entities are not reported through our financial reporting system. That is our government financial information system. And also, they are not reporting to the Accountant General, either hard copy or soft copy, or even if they are, that is not reflected in our budget. Which is why when we look at our budget, we realize that all the project accounts, the money that came for them, are almost not reported in the budget. Even if they are reported, it is to a small degree that it's reported. I've already given this example. I think our previous talk with you and Vali, I said that for 2024, it was around 9 billion that was approved. Just project grants, $9 billion that was approved. But can you imagine, we have in the budget right now, the 2026 draft budget, what we have there is over $80 million. From 82 to $86 million that is reported as the actuals that came out of the $9 billion that was approved for 2024. But this is not true. This is not true, because we reached the Ministry of Finance about this to get the data. The data for the 9 major projects that I have already mentioned earlier, 9 major projects that are about 500 million and above for 2024. To get this data, we realized that is not the same as the data in our national budget. The money came, but it's not reported. So that means there is underreporting in our national budget. True project means donor funding is not reported in our national budget. That limits the scrutiny or oversight of the citizens, and also limits the oversight function of the National Assembly. But for the National Assembly, what I would say, I think it is probably due to complacency, because whatever data they need, they can get. And they have to be the ones at the top of this. They have to make sure that the data that is supposed to enter our budget, the data that is supposed to be presented to them, is presented to them in a timely manner, so that they can prevent misuse of public resources. There is law oversight. National Assembly members are responsible for this. They are not performing their function to the expectation. The Ministry of Finance is also responsible, the minister especially and the Accountant General are responsible to make sure that project accounts are reported to them, so that they can prevent the misuse of public funds, project funds,
but they are not doing it. They are also failing at their function. The National Audit Office cannot fully audit the project donor funded projects. In fact, in our audit reports, what we see is just statement of external assistance received, project grants and external loans. Just a statement of external assistance received, the money approved and the money received. That's it. The procurement procedures followed, and also the goods and services bought, the money implemented, the money used to implement projects, how that money is used, how it was utilized, we cannot tell. Because the National Audit Office could not fully audit all these projects. And the auditing that is done, the audit report that is submitted to the donors, is not sufficient enough for scrutiny. We need our National Audit Office to be part of the scrutiny, the auditing of our project accounts and our projects, to ensure that there is value for money, and to ensure that the money that comes for development is actually inputted into our development. But there is huge weak oversight, both from our oversight institutions, from National Assembly, from National Audit Office, and also from our Ministry of Finance. And that needs to change in order to make sure that we make sure our development funds go into development. Because if there is no transparency, again, there is no transparency and there is no proper oversight. So that will lead to misuse of funds, corruption, and then ultimately we will not realize the development that we need for our country.
Oh, Lamin, it's been absolutely incredible. You have such, really a very, very profound way of putting things into perspective and really explaining the state of our Gambian economy. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned so much from you. But to wrap this conversation, would you just share with us at your level at the CBMT, which for those of you who just joined us and you don't know what that means, is Lamin works at a civil society organization called Center for Budget and Microeconomics Transparency. And part of why I really wanted to talk to him is to understand that what their job or what their role is and how can citizens get involved, together with understanding the current state of government economy, both from the past and the present in light of the 2026 draft budget. But what sort of projects are you guys going to be working on going forward? What are some of the focus areas? If you can dial it on your next projects or your focus areas for your civil society going forward, and if there's anything like extra that you want to really highlight in terms of the state of our economy and what people should be really doing in terms of citizen accountability and transparency, just this is the time to really do it, and then we can wrap this up.
No, thank you very much, Ibrahim. For CBMT, what our aim is, we want to make sure that the public's understanding of government finance and the public's understanding of the economy, is strengthened. But there is one component of that we currently are even working on, and we have dedicated a lot of resources and time to that. That is to make sure that our public development initiatives are transparent, they are inclusive, they are purposeful, they are sustainable, and they are optimal. This has been the thing that we are fighting for. But again, we want to increase scrutiny over our public development initiatives. We want to increase the scrutiny. We want to educate the public on these development initiatives, because I know for a fact that if we implement our development initiatives the right way, this country will progress. This country will experience massive economic growth and massive economic development. That is the constraint that we have. And our advocacy point, one of our key advocacy points, is basically to make sure that we eliminate this problem. Public development projects are transparent and they are fit for purpose. This is our main goal. Currently, this is what we are working on. And for the foreseeable future, we will never stop advocating for this, to making sure that the public development initiatives are transparent, they are inclusive, they are purposeful, they are fit for purpose, they are optimal, and all that. We will never stop that. But in addition to that, what we also want to do is that to bring applied economics to the doorsteps of the people of the Gambia, be it inflation, you know, be it economic production, be it international trade, be it our monetary policy, be it our fiscal policy, everything all inclusive. We want to bring it to the doorstep of our citizens, to explain to them what the economy is all about in a simplified manner, to explain to them what public finance is all about in a simplified manner, and to make citizens understand that whatever money the government spends or gets is for all citizens. It's not the government money. It's not just, citizens keep saying it's public money, it's public government money. No, it is our money. It is money that belongs to the people of the Gambia, residents of the Gambia, citizens of the Gambia. And we should have that understanding. We want to inculcate that understanding in the minds of every single Gambian, or in the mind of every single Gambian. So here is it, Ibrahim. In a nutshell, we want inclusive economic development, inclusive economic growth, and inclusive economic progress, inclusive national progress. And that cannot be done without the involvement of everyone and without the improvement of knowledge of the people of the Gambia's knowledge in terms of public finance, knowledge in terms of the economy. Because sometimes people are indifferent towards economic development, towards contributing to economic development, because they do not understand it. If you contribute to it, as long as it is inclusive, you will benefit from it. So our advocacy point is this, and all the projects that we will be implementing will lean towards that, to ensure that our public service delivery and our public investment projects are, as I have said, transparent, inclusive, purposeful, sustainable, and optimal, so that we can have inclusive national development.
Oh, thank you so much, my brother, Mr. Dibba. It's been, like I said, it's been really wonderful talking to you and very educative and enlightening. I really appreciate your perspective and analysis. We're going to do this again, I hope, and again and again. And I hope our audience also find it as useful as I do, in terms of really understanding the intricacies and the nuances of what an economy is and how an economy also works. So thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time. I enjoy talking to you once again, and I look forward for us to
Thank
have
you.
this a lot more.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. I feel privileged to be here, honestly, and to have this conversation with you. And thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the viewers, and thank you to everyone. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much to our audience as well. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for engaging. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube account. Don't forget to share our interviews. Don't forget to like, comment. Don't forget to also share feedback. You're always welcome. Or even if you want to come on the pod, this is a Gambian stuff. I get inspired a lot with Gambians with ideas, and so I'm going to continue to have conversations like this. So until we meet again, you all have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Thank you. Have a good night.